Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe, that's Ronaldo Brown, that's Jay Motti, and we are joined today by Jamie Jackson from The Guardian. Obviously a massive day for Manchester United. Ruben Amorim sacked this morning at Carrington by the powers that be. Who exactly was in that room, I'm not entirely sure, but hopefully we'll be able to find out. We've got a lot to talk about. Jamie, thank you for joining us. You've been a sort of crucial part of following this story, pertaining particularly to Friday afternoon's press conference when you were the one that asked him the question about why is it taken so long to realise that changing your formation might be the right thing to do. And it seems as though that story, not that you sort of planted, but that you uncovered, has been the spark that has ended Ruben Amorim's career at Manchester United.
Yeah, I mean, my reading of it is basically what happened on Christmas Eve. He came out with this comment about, I now no longer think I can get big players to play a perfect 3-4-3. I'm paraphrasing. Now, that wasn't the headline story that day, because he also said in that same press conference, Kobbie Mainoo is the future of Manchester United, which in itself actually is quite an odd thing for him to say, considering he never plays the guy, right? And so I stored that away, that comment I'm talking about the big players, no money. And so when I asked him it on Friday, he walked into the press conference first minute to say, with really, really unhappy look on his face. Yes, and I've been told that when you lost at Grimsby, he came into that first press conference after the Grimsby game with a on purposely really happy face, just trying to sort of breeze it out, face it out, everything's all fine here. So what I'm trying to say is I think he may have done that again on purpose on Friday. Listen, don't get me wrong, he's definitely cheesed up, but what I'm saying is I think he went in there thinking if it comes to it, I'll say what I want to say. And so when I asked him it, I fully expected him to rebut it, because for me, the original quote said it all. He's basically saying, there's been a change here. I now understand I can no longer get these big players. So he rebuts it again. And then when I sort of actually said the words change in budget and mentioned Jason Wilcox, if you notice on the film, when I say the change in budget bit, there's a little smile, like, yeah, okay. And then there's the sort of mention of Jason Wilcox. And that's when he came out with, you're a very smart guy, which is obviously, I think he underplayed me. I think it should have been genius. But my reading of it is, he was ready to sort of, and he said basically as much as he felt he could say. To be fair to the guy, I think he did genuinely try to swerve it at first, but because I was able to go back to him and, it's like anything. If you've got something on your mind and you feel you've been dealt an injustice, right? If you've been treated unfairly in life, right? Yeah. Which I think he feels he had been in this job, then in the end it's difficult not to say your piece because you feel like you want to get it off your chest. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. So I think that's maybe why some of my colleagues followed it yesterday at Ellen Road, and he said all this stuff, which for me was basically, you could say it was a back me or sack me, but actually I just thought it was a sack me thing. Him saying, I'm not going to resign, but by the way, sporting department has to do sporting director has to do their own job. That's basically Wilcox. And if you can't handle the criticism of Gary Neville, we need to change the club. My reading of that part is, Neville's probably got quite a lot of heft with regard to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, possibly Wilcox, Barada, and maybe some of the stuff he was saying, Neville or has been saying, which, by the way, I think has been quite fair criticism, a lot of it, was sort of maybe influencing people like Wilcox. So, yeah, all in all, on unhappy gentleman. And actually, when I came back, I did the City game, so I didn't go to Ellen Road. When I came back from that game, Chelsea, I got a tip that, he's basically gone. So I did a story late last night, having put it to United. It was interesting. I put it to United, sort of saying, its future's in the balance. What I was told was it's a really, really volatile situation. This is going, last night, no one really knows. And United didn't come back to me, but they had good 2-3 hours to sort of offer a response. And in my world of dealing with clubs, you learn to sort of read what certain, even non-responses can mean. We did the story, sort of saying that, basically sort of saying he's probably going to go this morning. So I wasn't that surprised this morning. What I have been surprised about a little bit is, I don't know, this whole thing about suddenly there's no longer any money in January, which has kind of initiated this, from him having been told maybe up to November. Why change your mind from November to, well, I say the answer to that is results, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is he's been back with £250 million in the summer. If you also remember, you will remember this, Ten Hag they weren't sure about, right? And they had that summer when they, at the start, when they ran about the FA Cup final, which he won, they interviewed all these people, stuck with Ten Hag, spent all that money, and then he's gone by October, like late October. It's kind of similar in a way. It's sort of like dithering, it's sort of like, and I think on Amorim's side, another indicator to me, and I think, again, Amorim will be reading this, that Mainoo thing I just mentioned, Kobbie Mainoo is the future of Manchester United. I was told, did the story, basically saying, I think it was like middle of December, that they weren't sure about selling Mainoo because basically thought he might outlast Amorim,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and And when I did the story, I had to be careful about how I worded it at the time. But basically, I wrote it something like, there's a view that Manu could convince Amorim, could get back to the team, or the next coach. And that was basically sort of addressing that. So all these things I'm saying, I'm sure Amorim's picking up on it, right? You know what it's like. If you're especially in a football club and you understand I'm not too sure if they back me. So I think he probably understood that, and I think he just had enough, basically. Now, we'll talk about it. Now, whether you think he'd been treated right or fairly, or it was like good business sense or football sense, the whole thing is I don't know, for you three gents and people, I think it's a bit of a mess, really. Well,
do you think his comments after Leeds were premeditated?
I don't know for sure, but I do think it. Yes, I do. Yeah.
It did feel like it.
Yeah, I think in one way he's quite temperamental. He was viewed that way in the club. It's quite sort of like mercurial up and down. But on the other hand, I think he's quite smart. And I don't think anything of these sort of guys, sort of top clubs, within reason, isn't but it's something serious about their career and about their job and what might happen. Like a bit on Friday, I'm talking about the sort of the dour phase. I think that sort of stuff is premeditated. He knew what would happen with that. He was, how could he really come back from that? He was basically saying, I've been
stitched up.
Yeah,
just on the transfers, Jamie. Like how he thought in November he was
November-ish,
November he was going to get transfers in January, and then he gets to January and it's like you ain't going to get any transfers. Was that just Antoine Semenyo? Was that like we're going to try and get him, and if we don't get him, that's it? Or was there other promises as well, or other sort of plans?
I think what happened with Semenyo was, from what I understand, he was in contact with him in the summer, try and bring him then, or at least say, look, I like you. I think what's happened is the players turned around and decided on City, and he's thought, well, there's 65 million there in the pot. Can't I have it for, I don't know, Belaber or Wharton or whoever it might be? You know what I mean? And the answer was no, and I think that's kind of what happened. He's cheesy. Like, well, why?
Because that's because that makes
of
sense.
these reservations.
Because we're hearing that it was Semenyo or no one. But then you think, well, if there's money for him,
exactly.
Why not for another good young player who could come in and do a job? That is a bit confusing.
Because if you look at it from his point of view, I get that the mode of play, you can't beat Wolves. You got the West Ham, Everton, absolute nadirs, Grimsby, blah, blah, blah. But from his point of view, you're sixth, but only on goal difference. I think only 2 points behind fourth, right? He has improved the team, but then you look at the other way and say, well, wait a minute, if you'd won some of those games I just mentioned, and you've drawn about nearly as many as you've won, imagine some of those points were wins instead, you'd be challenging. Maybe, that's kind of killed him as well.
Are you buying this line from the club? The line that it's just, we're sat in sixth, that it's not really happening.
And we're sacking him to get the best chance of
or do you think
that
it's the rift is the thing?
Yeah, I think it's the rift. I think if he doesn't say anything on Friday, doesn't say anything on Leeds yesterday, he's still in place. In a way, he might have done him a favour, because I think maybe they wanted to get rid of him, right? And so he so maybe you could then say, wait a minute, if we don't back him in January, as we're talking about the Semenyo money, maybe this is going to happen. So he's going to get cheesed off and made. You know what I mean?
Right, murdered by neglect kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ronnie, we haven't really spoken on air at all. You've been
not really in general. You've been downstairs.
No, I've been downstairs.
You've been on every video.
To anymore, Ronnie.
Hey, Joe's avoided me all
I
the
haven't avoided anything. I'm addressing you now.
Ronnie's been looking for Joe ever since he could. Where is he?
Where's Joe? No, how do you feel about all this?
It's not. People probably won't believe me, but I don't think a United manager getting sacked is ever that happy of an occasion. Because what does it suggest? It suggests that the club is failing, invariably on the pitch or off it, which I think is a different story in itself, because I think eyes do still need to be on the likes of Berardi and Wilcox as well as Amorim.
100%.
100%. It's not. It isn't just him. I still think they have a lot to answer for, and I think they should be under the microscope in terms of the job that they'll be doing. I 100% think that as well.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. I mean, that's they're in charge of putting the right people, football people, in place, right?
Are you aware of any? Because I think one thing we all said, or I haven't spoken to you, Ronnie, but everyone I've spoken to wants to hear from them now, because they purposely made a point of being a public version of the role that they're in. Wilcox has done interviews, Berardi less so, but he did the one before Liverpool, I think a joint one, didn't he, last season?
That was well timed.
Yeah,
I was at that. I was in that. Yeah.
Ratcliffe again, when he's announcing good news, you can't get him out of the. You can't get the cameras in front of him quick enough. Now, obviously, if you're just going to be a head coach, and actually, realistically, it's these other people running Man United, we need to hear from these people that run Man United. Are you aware of anything on that front in terms of expectations?
Well, I would be surprised if that happens, but you hit upon basically, I think, one of the massive issues with a football/sporting director. I mean, if you look at Guardiola at City, yeah, he's got one, but he's like Ferguson was at United. Yeah. Now you get that control through success. I get that, but what you're saying there, they're not really accountable. Yeah, Berardi and Ashworth it was at the time did that one before Liverpool.
Ashworth, that was it. Sorry.
Yeah, but no, I mean, and as you sort of said, it wasn't greatly timed. It kind of backfired on him because I think Ten Hag was gone about a month later. But I have written that point basically. I think it was maybe the start of this season. How about they send out like the chief executive or the football director, twice a year, right? Just to sort of deal with some of this stuff because, I get back to this thing. If you are the football manager or head coach, you're still living or dying by your results, aren't you? And what get your results or not is the players. And if you don't want player X, then I don't understand why you've got that manager there. You basically just said that the actual people running. You could sort of say to a certain extent that Wilcox has a greater influence on the team than the head coach Ruben Amorim because he has final say with Berardi on players. And if that's, we all know players it's all about players, isn't it? Obviously, so it seems a little bit back to front. I think a sporting or football director, however you want to describe it, should be there just to sort of make sure that you hire the right manager, but then the manager is then it's up to them. Of course, you can't go and buy players who are silly signings, but the manager has to have the final say, and that's why he was coming out with this yesterday. He was basically saying that, I'm not Tuchel, I'm not Mourinho, but I am the manager, and I think he was basically saying, you're kind of killing me a little bit for the results, but I'm not signing a lot of these players, or some of these I don't want.
We just don't learn, do we? We just don't learn at United. It's the same. Remember when Jose got Fred, and he obviously didn't want him because he more or less said it. I remember the Juve game when we lost 1-0 at Old Trafford, and Fred was on the bench, and after the game he said, I looked at my bench and I had no one. And we just bought Fred, and you think that's a message.
50 million.
Ugarte. Did Ten Hag want Ugarte?
Ten Hag didn't want.
Did he?
Ugarte.
Didn't play him.
He wanted to keep Scott.
Yeah, he wanted to keep McTominay. And it's I'm not saying that necessarily Ruben Amorim didn't want any of the players we bought because he played them all, but he obviously wanted a midfielder. Yeah. And even the players we bought, there was talk that he wanted maybe Ollie Watkins over Sesko, he wanted Martinez over Senna Lomans because he wanted more players that were ready right now, proven in the Premier League, and it just feels like we're just not learning anything. Nothing's changing, and it was going to change for the better under Inos. And we're in the same scenario where we've got a manager who's unhappy with the signings or unhappy with the way the control or lack of control he's got, and he's sort of either speaking out or acting out, and he ends up getting sacked. And then there's a good chance us four are sat here in 2 years' time talking about how whoever else has come in has been sacked.
You need that strong trident, don't you? That almost like synergy between the manager, the sporting director, and obviously head of recruitment or whatever it is, because that's usually been like the spine or the baseline for teams in the league that have done well. I can't always remember the names, but obviously City had it with Pep and
Stan, is it?
And
Sorry,
I think Arteta and Edu, but I don't know before that obviously went sour. It is very important, and if there's a little bit of friction between them and they aren't always aligned, it usually ends up in something like this.
I mean, United will deny or do sort of deny this, but Ashworth I think basically went because he didn't fancy. He didn't think Amorim was the right coach. Now that to me, let's say he was listened to. Then you don't get Amorim, you get someone. I'm not saying it would have worked, but that says to me that if you're Ashworth, you kind of understood United a little bit more than Wilcox and Berardi. I mean. If you're a manager worth your salt, if you actually think you're good at, elite manager, and I think you have to have a bit of arrogance in life and anything, or confidence, let's put it that way, why would you necessarily take a massive job at United? You paid all this money, and then you turn around and think, wait a minute, but I've actually got to listen to someone else who sort of hasn't ever done it at the coalface. Jason Wilcox has never managed a football team, I don't think. Nothing against him personally, but you know what I mean? Why would you think that was a sort of reasonable? How is that good for the team necessarily? So I go back to is I think previously we were always told that managers at United had a veto over transfers. That has now changed, and I kind of understand why. But if you appoint the right manager, right, then it will never go totally wrong. Okay, the results might not be good enough if he gets sacked, but what I'm saying is I think a lot of that was appointing a football director was initially the idea to sort of make sure you didn't end up in loads of debt and, oh my gosh, we're saddled with all these players. But it's happened anyway, hasn't it? Do you know what I'm getting at? So if you don't get the right director of football, then the rest of it goes to pot anyway.
With obviously the last two seasons panning out the way they have, sacking two managers roughly the same time in the season, end of October, start of January, the same ballpark. We basically get to a point where you cement the season as being one thing, don't like what that thing is, and change. To you, is that more, because I would say you can't have, it's clearly a sign that something is going wrong. Do you think that's more of a worry that they aren't backing their own decisions because they'll keep Ten Hag on and then actually, oh no, we've got it wrong 3 months later. They did almost the exact same thing with Ruben Amorim. Or is it that they keep getting these decisions wrong in the first place? And if so, which one is almost sort of more worrying, do you think?
I think they get the decisions wrong in the first place. I mean, listen, on the one hand, it's very difficult, obviously, in football, because it's, especially now, it's very, very competitive. But by definition, these people are paid millions and millions to get these decisions right.
Yeah.
And if you don't get it right, don't get them right, you know, two on the balance essentially, then you think that someone like Wilcox would be under threat. Now I'm told that because he's Barada's appointment stroke man, you know, they were at City together. You know, there was always only going to be one winner in this one. But if you,
that can't go on forever.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. So Barada's the chief executive, I get that. But then you've got Ratcliffe, who's his boss, right? Now, if Ratcliffe looks at it and thinks, wait a minute, this has happened twice now. It's making me look a bit stupid, actually. You know, the bloke's a billionaire. Whatever you think about his politics and all that, he's made a lot of money, so he knows, you know, who he is and what he wants. You know what I mean? You could agree with that or not, but, you know, he's his own man, is what I'm trying to say. So, I'm not suggesting that he's going to turn around and sack Wilcox, but I have heard some interesting stories about Ratcliffe making decisions sort of on the cuff or, you know, just instantaneously and acted upon them because he's able to in his working life because he's so rich and he runs the whole thing. So just to add to that, though, the Glazers do still have a big say at United. But all this stuff about, you know, it's a football policy, is purely down to Ratcliffe. It's not. He runs it day to day and has a big say, but the Glazers compete, you know. So this will not have been run by them. You know, they will have had a say in this. But yeah, I mean, to go back to your original point, twice now they differed. They've looked, you know, they've sort of backed Ten Hag over the summer when it looked like they were going to sack him, and then sacked him 2 months, you know, whatever it was, October. And with Amorim, they backed him 250 million with the sort of free forwards and Lammens, a goalkeeper, and then half a season later, they pulled the plug. I mean, you know, I get it in football; it's a results business and all the rest of it. But this is another thing, which is why it's a mess. You weren't playing amazing football, but the results had got better, right? You know, overall, yes. Yeah. He probably shouldn't have still been in the job, but it just seems like a very odd point to go, oh, actually, you know what, that puts Semenyo money, you're not going to have it. Sort of kicking off this whole thing whereby he's lost his job and they're looking around. I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, again, to a certain extent, United is such a different club to any other club in this country, including Liverpool, if you ask me, just because the scrutiny is just off the charts, that you almost do need a one-off manager like a Ferguson or a Busby to like make it, you know, Klopp, dare I say, I know you don't want to hear that, but, you know, someone who's just like massive, you know, proper sort of personality, and then it's a smart football cookie. It's a difficult formula to find, and this is why when I hear some of the names we'll go on to now that I'm hearing, like Glasner, Southgate, Iriola, maybe a couple of others I can't remember exactly. I mean, Glasner's an interesting one because obviously he's a free merchant. You just got rid of one of them. Now, I was told that when Amorim came in, there was an agreement, right, with Amorim, that Amorim agreed to, that over time he would be flexible enough to change his 3-4-3 and or move away from a sort of pragmatic mode of play, let's call it boring, to sort of more United attack. That never happened, obviously. And that was another reason that sort of bemused the powers that be there. What happened to this agreement we had? And I think that's quite interesting because one of the things that was thrown at Amorim quite rightly all the time is, surely you've got it in your locker as an elite coach to have it, to be able to sort of just change it every now and then. And he did it against Newcastle, right? Then he went back to the 3-4-3 v Wolves and it sort of stunk the place out. So, you know what I mean? So getting back to Glasner, on the one hand, if he's, you know, who's to say if they go for him, and I personally don't think they should, I don't think he's big enough, but if they go for him and he says to them, yeah, of course I'll change. Well, they've already had the fingers burnt with Amorim, who I'm told, on good authority, agreed to that and went back on it. So that would feel like another part of the gamble.
That's the concern, you know, because I think it's very hard to argue that based on actual performances and things that are factual and tangible, Amorim being sacked isn't unjust. When you look at his win rate, when you look 100%. At things like that, you can put him in there and argue quite strongly that he's United's worst ever performing manager. Can you really disagree with that? Probably not. He's been sacked. You can't really say it's unfair or unjust for me based on what he's actually shown in his performance. I'll say that strongly. I feel like and it's also probably a matter of, even though things did get better, he almost set the barometer for what improvement was by finishing 15th anyway.
Sure.
And I think people forget that as well.
That's a good point.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
But the only concern now is, like, obviously, what do United actually get the next decision right? Because I think obviously Amorim's been proven to have been the wrong guy. It's fair enough to say. It's just now the next choice. do you believe in Inos? Do you believe in Wilcox? Do you believe in Barada that they're actually going to get the right guy next?
I mean, to be honest with you, there's no evidence to say they will. So far, it's been a bit of a shambles. Let's be honest. These decisions that they made that were meant to be best in class and all the rest of it, and you brought in Dan Ashworth after paying compensation and waiting for him and all the rest of it, and then you sacked him because he sort of more or less said that the manager you're going to bring in ain't going to work in the Premier League, and he was right. And then you've sacked the manager that Dan Ashworth told you weren't going to work in the Premier League because he stuck to his guns and did the exact formation that he had success at Sporting, which everyone warned wouldn't work at Manchester United. Jason Wilcox, who has this reputation, he did really well at City and the academy there, and there's no disputing that he did. But does that mean he's the guy to run Manchester United? No, it doesn't. Like, he's got to show a bit more than that. And yeah, okay, what did he do 6 months at Southampton where, I don't know, what did he do there? Nothing.
Academy.
They were doing well in the Championship, weren't they?
I mean, I'm not having to think of you, but does that mean you're ready to be the most important man, arguably, at Manchester United? No. And then Omar Barada, we had this big fanfare when we've got this guy from City because he's going to go from City's director or whatever to being our CEO, and it's like a big coup. Well, is it? Where's the evidence? So far, what I've seen is just a load of... You keep saying divering. I didn't want to see divering from these people. They paid a load of money. They've come in with big reputations. And they've made all these decisions which have just made United worse. I've just watched my club finish 15th and lose a final to Spurs, which was a low point. Then we get knocked out of the Carabao Cup to Grimsby. Then we're sort of, okay, we're all right. It looked like we might actually be in a league position that isn't too bad. And then they sacked the manager. It's like, okay, then what is the plan here? None of it makes any sense to me at all. And I've got no reason whatsoever to believe that Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada know what they're doing. They've not shown me anything that makes me say, well, you can't argue with that. What have they done that makes you think that?
And that was what was being accused, because you mentioned about obviously their jobs being probably on the line, and Ratcliffe probably having the potential to be a little bit impulsive with the decisions he makes. Obviously he's a United fan, obviously he's invested a lot of money into it as well, and we did think they would probably try and stick it out till the very end with Amorim, because you know the decision was they're almost wedded to him in terms of the appointment and sticking with him. And they thought, if Amorim fails, then invariably we failed as well. And that's 100%. And so they've pulled the plug now. Probably was right. I don't think he was ever good enough really to be United manager, or to get us back to where he wanted to be from what I have seen. It's just because I didn't think it could get worse than the Ten Hag situation that we had at one point, and then you look back on him, do you know what I mean? And then it got worse. So I'm just hoping it's
Amorim is because of the nature of his sacking, he's one of the very few managers that has left the club in a better league position than he found it. Which I'm not saying he's been good at United and the results haven't been good enough, but we were 14th when he arrived and he leaves us in 6th. So it's obviously different reasons that he's been sacked than just everyone else, because everyone else is at least Ten Hag finished 8th in the season and kept his job. Then what was it? I think 13th, 14th when he got sacked. Like Amorim finished 15th, kept his job, fair enough. But then you know we're at the best position we've been in under him, and now's the time we get sacked. That clearly is a different reason for sacking him than just the results haven't been good enough, which we've all said already.
And you know what's crazy about the league? The league this season and obviously the parity that's going on and how condensed it is, because obviously we're 2 points away top 4, but then 2 points behind us takes us to 11th or 12th. So like, I know people are kind of holding on to the always 6th and 2 points away. It's actually true, but I don't think we should be kind of, sometimes we need to look at United more in isolation and think just because the likes of Chelsea and Newcastle and Tottenham and Liverpool have been poor as well and fell by the wayside, so that we're still up there, doesn't mean that we're doing well. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm not saying that we're doing well. I'm not saying that we are doing well.
Because
we're definitely doing better than we were last season. And the performances are better than last season. And we don't get outplayed and outran and battered by teams like we did last season. We're definitely better now than we were 12 months ago.
Yeah, that's true. But if we were than last season, then we'd be playing Wrexham.
No, of course. But what I'm saying is we've improved, and the manager has been sacked as a result of that, which is the first time we've seen that, certainly in recent seasons. And that's what I'm saying. It all points to he hasn't been sacked because of what's happened on the pitch. He's been sacked because he's had a falling out with the people above him.
We've done this before. We've done this before with managers, like where you know Van Gaal won the FA Cup and finished 5th and got sacked, and he was better than David Moyes. I think we can all agree on that. But the reason there was Jose Mourinho was waiting to come into the wings. You know, Jose Mourinho, I know obviously when he got sacked we weren't, but he just finished 2nd and got to an FA Cup final. Got sacked. Ollie got to a Europa League final, finished 2nd. Wasn't that? I know we had some bad results. I'm not disputing that, but his record, like overall, wasn't that bad. and got sacked. It doesn't feel to me like anything has changed.
Yeah,
Under Inos, that's my big worry, is that if Inos weren't in the equation, this was the Glazers and Ed Woodward making these decisions, it just feel the same.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, one of the things that I often wonder is part of the problem that there's a very, very small pool of really top managers, right? And so they're actually hard to acquire. And so if you then sort of say, well, Guardiola's wedded to City, and I don't know who else is there in the league. I'm not sure Arteta's that great, but I'm just trying to think. Already I'm struggling beyond Guardiola of someone who you think, right, okay. But then I start to think, even if it was Guardiola or someone equivalent, would that person be given what they need? At United, because what you're just describing then, Van Gaal going and Solskjaer. I mean, second in a Europa League final. I know it's not Manchester United at all, but it's a lot better than what's been going on the last couple of years. But I think at the time they were right to sack him, but it's just very difficult to crack United because actually, I think there's a lot of factors. I mentioned some of the other things is what you're talking there about the parity. I think it's not like a sort of a one or a two horse league, is it, like Spain or Germany, for example? Germany, it's Bayern basically. So you have got a lot of competitors here who even if they're not challenging for the title, they can afford to have some of these better players that might have gone to United a lot easier, like Believers, an example. I mean, he's 100 million plus for a player who's not done anything really. He's played all right for Brighton, and he hasn't done that well. That's the asking price. Wharton's in the same bracket. Why? Because he's English. It's all gone a little bit crazy, right? Yes, and so you're competing with that, and So I go back to this thing. What is the X factor that's sort of separating the champions of England consistently, and it's like an amazing manager. And in your case, you had Ferguson for so long, for 26 and a half years. I know he didn't win anything, no league title for the first 7. But then after that, but he comes around once every 100 years, something like it.
It's hard though, isn't it? Because I think you could do a whole. Well, you could spend endless time looking at that, because I don't know is the answer. Like when we talk about how many players are there on the planet that you could make an 11 out of that's capable of winning the league. How many managers are there that's capable of winning the league? Because if you look at Man United as the evidence, or Liverpool as the evidence, you get one manager every generation that's capable of doing it. But if you look at Man City or Chelsea as the evidence, or Bayern Munich as the evidence,
good point.
They roll around like that.
No, you're right. Definitely.
It's hard to know what the truth is and where the truth is. And the same with players. You think, okay, look at someone like Ousmane Dembele. For large portions of his career, he was an underachieving player with immense talent. Last season, he made and was one of the big reasons that PSG were the best team in the world, alongside a manager, a squad full of good players. But he's someone that, you take the kind of generational freaks out of it. Players used to have an amazing season or two and dip back down a little bit. Kaká's, Nedved's, but players like that. Ronaldinho even had a relatively short, absolute sort of lightning hot peak. And then you think, well, they're good enough to lead a top team to top things. So actually, is there 50 good players, or is there 500 good players that realistically, if you sign them and get the best out of them with a great manager, you could win the league with? And I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows. And I think it's so hard to know what it actually is that wins you trophies. Do we really know?
Well,
obviously a great manager will help, or a Ronaldo or a Messi will help. But can you do it the Chelsea way or the Bayern way or the whatever way, where it's pieces coming in and out all the time, as long as you have something else, which, again, we don't know.
Related to this, right?
Yeah.
It could be any manager who's currently working, right? Even if you don't like the club or whatever, who would you think is the best? I know it's not an exact science, but if you could choose anyone, you could get them, and the fans would accept them at first. So forget about rivals. I know it's not, who, because I think it's difficult to choose. Who would you choose?
What if you could get anyone in the world?
Yeah. Who's a going concern at the moment? Who's a manager? Who I don't mean someone who's dead or retired. I mean someone who's going at the moment. Currently a manager.
Luis Enrique, probably.
Right. Okay.
PSG.
If you could get him,
that's no barrier. Whoever you can get them. So who would you choose?
Obviously, if you wanted to get anyone, you probably go for Pep Guardiola. Right. But it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, same. Yeah.
And then, because I think Enrique, right, is interesting, because would Enrique be able to come into the league and sort of do it with enough time with the pressure of United? Because I think this is the other thing, isn't it? If you're not in front, Guardiola obviously knows the league back to front and all the rest of it. Yeah. But Enrique's probably would be my choice, actually.
Managed 2 big clubs.
Yes. 2 trebles.
And 2 trebles.
He knows what he's doing, definitely. So,
but would
he want it?
United have got no end of managers that knew what they were doing until they got it. Like Jose Mourinho knew what he was doing. Won the league at Porto, the Champions League at Porto. Dominated the Premier League for a couple of seasons with Chelsea, playing a defensive style and system that certainly in my life, I was only very young, but have still never seen. 15 league goals in a season.
Sure.
That's unthinkable. One of the best Premier League teams ever, I think, alongside some of the great United teams. Then goes to Real Madrid, wins there. Goes to Inter Milan, wins a treble. Goes to Real Madrid, wins the league. Goes to Chelsea, wins the league. Comes to United, shit. Really? You know,
post-prime?
Post-prime maybe, but the prime didn't seem to be slowing down until he got here. You know, we always seem to be catching him post-prime. Louis van Gaal won the league at Bayern, won the league at Barca, won the league everywhere he'd been, comes to United, past it.
So then you've got to look upstairs, haven't you?
You've got to.
The structure, the people.
That's what worries me the most.
There's so much more to it than just, is this manager any good?
Changed.
Because I think you could have stuck Ruben Amorim in, taken over from Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, okay.
Or put him in there instead of Mancini 10, 15 years ago, instead of Pellegrini, and he probably wins a league with that team.
Yeah.
Or certainly isn't this floundering 15th place finish that we saw with Man United. And the same is the case for a lot of the managers that we've had. I think the only one that has ever almost overachieved in terms of their CV to what we got was probably Solskjaer.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that came from his love for the club and our love for him and him understanding what it is to be at Manchester United. But everyone else comes to us and has the worst spell of their career, or the beginning of the end. Do you think, surely we're not getting it wrong every single time?
To be fair, we did spend like the first 15 minutes of this talk and didn't really speak about Amorim much. He spoke mostly about the boardroom and higher ups and probably the issues that they're having, because it is coinciding. As I said to start this, I do think a lot needs to be looked at with, because obviously the Glazers are still involved themselves, but I think the microscope does need to be put onto them, because if they've obviously hired Amorim, knowing that he played a system that was completely misaligned with the current personnel of the squad, knowing that he wasn't probably going to get 2, 3, 4 windows, and you don't really get that in a league club like Manchester United, then why appoint him anyway? And then, so it's almost like you can say Amorim wasn't a good enough manager and was incompetent, but then you could also say it's been worsened by the fact that he's been partially set up to fail by the ones above him as well. It could be both.
On the sort of plan, Jamie, if you can clarify what's going on now. So Darren Fletcher's coming in as sort of interim.
Yeah.
For
in
how
theory,
long?
Well, in theory, just for the Burnley game, but I am told that they wouldn't be heartbroken if he had to do more. And then you then extend that and say, would he get it for the rest of the season? I think it's possible. I'm not saying it will happen, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's what they're thinking. And then with regard to whether, if it's not him, is he going to be replaced by a permanent manager, this season? Again, that's not been decided, because these are the sort of two questions I was asking today.
Is there any indication that they have plan other than Darren Fletcher for a caretaker manager at the end of the season?
Well, I don't know for sure, but the way in which the questions were answered today, it would suggest to me that I don't think they have got a plan for a caretaker to succeed Fletcher. I think they may well look at that now, but I mean, Fletcher's done quite a lot of jobs at United, and I think he kind of wants it, this chance. The one I would throw in there might be interested, Carrick, as possibly.
We were talking about Michael Carrick the other day. Michael Carrick's 4 games, whatever, in charge of United were one of the highlights of my time as a United fan. I loved him as a player. He actually did really well when he took over. We beat Arsenal, he got us through the Champions League. It was just, it was a lovely little month.
Yeah, so I haven't got any hard information. That was just like an opinion of mine, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're thinking, what about Carrick? If they are going to replace this interim Fletcher with another interim. Yeah,
interim to caretaker to permanent. It's like...
You know what? Maybe this shows how naive I am, but I know that Giggs was a caretaker. But I was staggered that Solskjaer wasn't. It was the first proper caretaker of this recent era. Yeah. I was staggered that Manchester United would consider a caretaker. You know what I mean? Because I just felt like that was a sort of like stopgap. How can you say it? But then after low budget. So I mean, I know he then got the job, but so what I'm trying. I know this whole thing about why would a manager want to come in mid-season, but again, for me, if you're a proper operator, you make it work on whatever terms you're given. This whole thing about Amorim saying I didn't want to come like last November. Why say that? You've been offered Manchester United, you make it work. That's part of who you are. Surely, if you're any good.
Yeah. So I do think the problem. My worry with that would be is the more stumbling blocks and hurdles and mini speed bumps you put in front of a manager, the more perfect they have to be to weather it all. And I think you already have to be pretty good to navigate what we've spoken about the squad and the size and the pressure and the media and the higher ups. to then add another level of, oh, by the way, it's not a problem, by the way, is it, if you're coming halfway through the season and try and change the style, and the manager, oh, no, fair enough. Eventually, it's just like, well, I've got 16 mini issues here that are for anyone other than Sir Alex Ferguson. You almost put I think the whole role of a sporting director and a CEO and an owner is to make it that you don't need Sir Alex Ferguson every time. That it doesn't have to be the greatest manager of our lifetimes or of his lifetime in order to be successful. You can do it with, more managers than just the greatest ever. And
City did that.
That's what City
Mancini,
did.
Pellegrini.
Yeah.
Pellegrini isn't an amazing manager, decent manager, but he's not like a generational manager who can just magic something out of nothing. He's a good manager who had a very good squad and won a title. Mancini did the same. Obviously, Pep's different.
Pep's a generational manager, but they didn't need him in the first
three managers
place.
have won a title at Manchester City, and only one of them, I'd argue, is...
But
where did they come when they got sacked?
Right?
Pellegrini?
Yeah. I think they were in the Champions League,
because
sometimes...
The difference is what we're talking about is the structure. City's got an amazing structure. You've got they've got all this money, Al Mubarak, but I know he's left out, but they had Begarenstein, who was like almost, if you want to call it, a genius football director who could recruit all these great, and they made some great signings. I mean, again, it goes back to players. De Bruyne was kind of bought when he was player of the season in Germany, but he'd failed at Chelsea sort of thing, and that's what I mean. So they pulled out loads of those from the bag. Fernandinho, I don't want to go
Fernandinho was such a good signing.
Yeah, all those sort of. And that's
see,
and that's when a sporting director does work. But what what went on there was when Mancini sort of threw his, whatever the cliche is, out of the pram, he went, didn't he? When they lost that game to Wigan, that final to Wigan, and all the rest of it, he fell out with him and he went. And Pellegrini was a holding sort of at that point, ahead of Guardiola leaving Bayern Munich. But you had a good structure. That's when the structure works. I know it sounds obvious, but when it doesn't work, it's obviously an absolute nightmare, because not only are you signing players that are, you're going to lose value and pay loads of money, but you've also got the people who are making those bad signings. They don't get sacked. It doesn't really happen as much, does it? It's repeated.
We've got
some chats.
Quite a few super chats. Yeah, Falcon Shuffle says they fired Ashworth for Amorim and then didn't reinforce the squad. What manager improves that? Joshua Bowater says no Hawaiian shirt. This isn't Jamie Jackson.
It's there.
It's there. You just got to see through it. This is a very important question actually from James Barry. Jay, how has the sacking affected your stocks in Manchester United?
Oh, hello.
Because Jay, about 18 months ago, Jay bought 20 quid worth of United shares, and it's never been worth the original price since.
I might have tried to sell them over Christmas because I was on my backside with all the presents I had to get, but I think I kept them. We're up. There's green.
There's green.
There's green. So the 20 quid I invested in Manchester United a few years ago is now £19.88. So that's a 12p loss. But for some reason, it's on the green. It's going up today.
Yeah,
so it's up by 1% today. So if I hold on to these babies, I might be in the profit by the end of the week.
How many shares was £20 by you? Like half?
It's not a share. It's
probably less.
Yeah, it's like a quarter, Jay. Let's put it this way. They didn't ring me when they were sacking Ruben Amorim to get my approval.
Yeah.
They didn't say, Jay, maybe they should have. Legally. Jay, is it all right? We'll let you know the manager's going to go today. Just, all right, yeah, sound.
Flojo90 says, what does this mean for Rashford? Presumably
good question. Well,
mate, the meltdown when Marcus Rashford returns to United.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to happen. Just because, I was told that unless Amorim, he will never play for United again. This is his choice unless Amorim leaves. So, but I just don't think the hierarchy people are talking about would accept it.
I think they'd look so stupid if they did.
Well,
if you get rid of someone for those reasons, and then go, actually, it's just Amorim, isn't it? Yeah.
Now we've lowered our standards enough that everything's all right.
Mainly will be happy.
Yeah, Mainu's a more direct correlation.
It's been interesting.
However,
same way Ahmad was when.
I was just going to say, but how does this affect Ahmad? Because you can't play Cunha and Burmo, Ahmad and Mainu in one.
And Burmo on the left.
And there you identify the problem with chopping and changing up a coach.
Who's out? Cunha.
No, Cunha up top.
So the £70 million striker's out instead.
Yeah.
The Manchester United Peter Crouch.
What? Yeah. So now, because if everyone plays, then you complain about not having enough depth on the bench.
No, listen. He's going through one. I like Benjamin Sesko.
Yeah.
He's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, on that, Gappy says signed a £70 million striker at 20. I think this is the Hoyland. Didn't like him. Then signed a £70 million striker. No goals. The issue starts there. Interesting point. Kojo says, we weren't going mad when we thought it was stupid to set up in a back three versus Wolves after the Newcastle first half. People tried to defend his stubbornness as if there was a sense to that Wolves game. On the Wolves game, there were reports that there had been an argument or discussion or cracks beginning to form after that game. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure yes, but I do think that he knew about the lack of budget of the Semenyo money before that, because the Christmas Eve presser was ahead of the Newcastle game. So there was the comment that I picked up on, but I think in between, that's why he's walked in on the Friday, last Friday, sort of with a face of thunder and sort of gave that performance he did. Maybe because I don't know, maybe he thought it could be Paul Rowner, and maybe he's, sometimes managers go get their agents involved and, to represent them and sort of say, look, we had an agreement, or what about this money sort of thing. You just don't know exactly the sort of, not shenanigans, but the sort of back and forth that occurred. But he definitely, I mean, that Wolves game for me, listen, anyone can get a freak result, but you shouldn't be drawing to Wolves, even with 8 players out with AFCON and injuries, and the way in which it happened was just, I just think he knew he was on. He was coming to the end himself. Yeah.
Was it? I can't believe. I just remembered seeing a report a couple of hours ago. I'm not sure it was who that said there was some sort of argument between him and Wilcox apparently on Friday. I'm not sure how much truth there is to it. Can't remember who exactly said it.
Yeah. No,
so I wonder.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I mean, the press conference was at the 1:15, I think, on Friday. So if it did happen, it would have happened before then, because he came in as I say. I mean, his relationship with Wilcox. What I got told as well today was that, as you'd expect, Wilcox would give regular feedback to Amorim about, team matters and how you're playing and sort of, are you actually going to be flexible and all the rest of it. But towards what we can now call the end of Amorim, he became less receptive to this. And I think that was put a born out in everything he said, particularly that I'm not too cool, I know I'm not Mourinho, but wait a minute, I want to manage this team, as in, do I really need
leave me alone?
Yeah, in a nutshell, just leave me to do my job. I mean, just about his job, he's on £9 or £10 million a year.
Is that it?
Why not let the guy?
Feeling sorry for this man.
Why not let the guy do the job? You know what I mean? You're paying all that money.
Yeah.
Away you go.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, like, you made a point. When you were sort of pressing him and you was like, I had one last time. The fact that he was willing to engage at all was so telling. Because usually when a journalist says that, I'll try again, or let me word it a different way. Usually the manager's like,
what's interesting?
He responded like he thought you knew the answers to the questions you're asking. Well,
he said, you're a smart man.
What's interesting, just a little side issue about that, is the previous, let's say, media operation, you got one question. It was like a 6-minute presser in total, and so what I used to do was, when it's a mic, I wouldn't give it back, so then get a second question. But what I'm saying is that would not have happened if I'd just been allowed one question. The fact that I could follow up with actually, I think it was a third one. So fair play to the media operation now for allowing that. But I think, and what you were just saying then, he said on Sunday something like, because I wasn't there, but he said something like, you're only getting certain information about, and that, I think that was him saying, some of you lot in here are being briefed by people and you're not getting enough. You know what I mean?
How much of that do you think goes on then? So obviously post him leaving, there's been seemingly a lot of information. Nothing official other than the 96 words of his announcement that he's leaving. A lot of information about what has gone on over the last few days, why he's left, when he left, what happened, all that. And then, how do you know? How should we know what to believe as fans?
Well, that's a very good question. To be honest, I'm in the same. No, but I'm in the same situation as a journalist, because you're only as credible as what your source is telling you. So therefore, it's up to you to make a judgment. Who's telling you? Yeah. And so that's why, The Guardian, for like a story, each story has to be double sourced, right? Okay. So the story I did last night about his, future imbalance was at least double sourced. But so it is a judgment call, and you have to understand that, it be good or bad reasons. But if someone is telling you something which is newsy and quite incendiary, there's a reason why. They're not doing it just to help me with my job. They're doing it because they want it out there. Now, what is that reason? Is it you know what I'm getting at? So you're right. Yeah. It's a really interesting question. It is a judgment all the time. And I get why people get frustrated if you get a story wrong or whatever, because they put their trust in you to be credible, and that's really appreciated. But sometimes, I think I've said this before on your channel, sometimes something could be true that you're told, and it could genuinely be not true 5 minutes later, but you haven't been lied to, and that's where you can get really. I always say transfers are like that. And it's actually one of the reasons why clubs don't like to talk about transfers, because you get the odd one where they look really stupid because they think it's a done deal. There was one, Dani Alves. City really thought they were going to get him. Yeah, and so how can I say this? You know, they weren't killing stories about it happening. And then last minute, I think it went to PSG, right? That summer.
Yeah.
And so that's just an example where they got it wrong. So it is a complete minefield reporting on football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we were saying that you could get accurate sourcing, and then literally something changes within the next 5 minutes, and then you're wrong.
Do you think, Jamie, as it stands right now, the club have an idea who they want as the permanent manager?
Yeah. I mean, listen, Wilcox, Barada would not be doing their job if they haven't always got a list. Yeah. You look at Guardiola, the most successful manager of his generation. That Maresca thing was born out to be true, and that was them because they don't actually know. Just quickly gone to City. Because I don't think Guardiola knows if he's going to still be there next summer, etc., etc. So you have to have that list. Yeah. Now, how credible that list is, is it just a list just to have to sort of show Ratcliffe? I've got, or if you know what I'm trying to say though, or is it actually one that they've researched? But yeah, so those names I mentioned then. I mean, I can also throw in Xavi. From what I'm told, Xavi would love to go there, but whether they would take him, they're not so sure because his English isn't great and all the rest of it. You could put De Zerbi in, not in the English thing, but De Zerbi is I think he would like it. Well, who wouldn't like to manage United? But I'm not too sure if he's on the sort of short list.
So the names that sort of seem to be floating around:
Southgate, Iraola, not in any order. Maresca, Glasner.
Yeah.
And there might be one or two more.
As soon as I heard Southgate,
I knew you were going to say that.
As soon as I heard Southgate,
listen, I'm not sticking up for Southgate at all. But I'll tell you why they like him. Because England, I hope you agree with this, England's probably there's only one job as pressured scrutiny as Manchester United. As a manager, it's England, right? You know what I mean? It's just like someone sneezes. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is Southgate enabled a culture where they could get to, I know they didn't win anything, and it's a big deal that, but they got to semi-final final. I think they think, I'm not agreeing with this, but they think if you could do that with England, you can do it at United, you can calm it down, get players to really play really well, let's see where it takes us.
So they're looking at that from a handling the pressure of a big job perspective almost more than the coaching.
Well, no, because part of that is the players, the England players under him played really well under him. They flourished because he created this club atmosphere and got rid of this whole thing of, oh God, it's a heavy shirt sort of thing, which you could argue can be the same. We talk
I think
about
whoever comes in at United does need to do that. I just can't imagine that Southgate is the best. And I know you're not advocating for him. You're just,
but I'm just telling you that I'm thinking,
on a couple of others then. So Glasner does seem to be the one that I've seen that word the most over the last sort of year.
That's a good way of putting it, I like it.
Whether that means he's the most likely or not is a completely different matter. Would there not be then the same reservations about formation and about...
I mentioned it before, didn't I? About the fingers being burnt with the agreement they had with Amorim, and then it turned out...
Would that not look like we're sort of repeating the same mistakes all over again?
Yeah, I mean, and also for me, listen, you can always get the one off and it might work, but, Crystal Palace is not Manchester United. It's an absolute universe.
Frankfurt.
Is there anyone though? Is there anyone that we think?
And that's why I asked the question before. So you can go through him. Ancelotti, maybe, right? But I mean, he's at Brazil. But you then start to run out of absolute massive beast managers who, are still sort of towards the peak of their power. Yeah. It's difficult, and this goes back to. I'm not saying it is the reason, but I do have a bit of a theory that the amount of managers who can handle United is like. Done as about two of them, and one of them is retired, which is Ferguson.
Unai Emery could be one of them.
Yeah, you see, now that's probably a name I forgot to mention. Yeah, now he for me, if you ask me my favourite, who I would go for, would be him. But that's just because I don't really know much about football.
You're in good company.
It's hard. Who would you like running? Of the people that seem like they're genuine candidates.
When I said Luis Enrique before, which is obviously a deluded opinion because he's happy at PSG. All the other names just seem underwhelming, and what happens is, as much as I've been very critical of Ruben Amorim, I said the same thing before. He was appointed. Once the manager then is sacked, you have to then move on and think who's going to be the next guy to be better or to improve or to have an element of success. Then I see the shortlist and I'm like,
yes,
because it's gone wrong so many times, and then you've got trauma passed down each time.
Yes,
obviously. And some people let that cloud the judgment. Anyway, I don't let it cloud mine. I still just judge the manager in isolation whilst they're here. I look at it and I think, who can it really be? Especially because I think a manager that's appointed now or is interviewed, the way they've seen the fallout with Amorim, they're going to be having a little bit more demands and asking questions about how the partnership's actually going to work. And as you said, usually the big club managers usually like having a lot of power.
And I think they should.
And be in that sense, whatever. But Inos have come in and said, obviously they appointed him as head coach, and it seems that they've tried to transition to this idea of having a sporting director or just an overarching almost like game model where they just have a head coach that implements it but doesn't have any veto and isn't a manager and doesn't have more responsibility. So it kind of makes me think, they probably are going to go for someone that fits underneath that. And Glasner doesn't feel like that is because Glasner's been at odds with Palace quite a bit when it comes to transfers and recruitment as well.
Exactly, that's a good point.
In terms of ambition. So I'm like,
are we looking for Oli and Rosina?
It's going to be someone like McKenna.
Last time
that they go after.
When they nearly got rid of Ten Hag that summer, Gary O'Neill and Kieran McKenna were looked at, and so that they fit into.
No disrespect. Kieran McKenna's fine. Gary O'Neill.
I'm just telling
Jesus Christ.
But you talk about sort of like, let's say for fans, underwhelming names. But that's because of what you're saying. They fit into a game model thing where you're the head coach, and Glasner's probably demanding more now because he's won the cup. He won the cup for it. They never won a trophy before. Wait a minute, look what I've done for you. I deserve this. And to a certain extent, I get that. I think you have to earn it, maybe. And Amorim didn't really earn it, did he? He lost to Spurs in that final. It was ridiculous.
Glasner one's weird though because Glasner obviously has the same formation that people are against. You have very few successful three at the back teams. And I think Inzaghi at Inter Milan, pretty much one of the only ones. Obviously, you've got Conte that's had success a couple of times as well.
Yeah.
But there's been this thing about under Amorim, it's followed on to this season, where United have struggled to win games or get points when they've had more than 50% possession, where we seem to be better when we can sit a little bit and counter-attack. Yeah. Palace are the exact same thing, but they have the exact same problems under Glasner. So it's like...
Who do you like, Jay?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, it's weird because there's part of me that feels like if you are looking towards next season, depending on what happens with Villa, could you not try and get someone like Unai Emery, because it's a much bigger club, Manchester United, than Aston Villa. I know they're much more successful.
And he's been at Arsenal as well, so he's handled that. He's been at a big club there. Not as big as United, but
than we have recently. But you might think of it and going, look, Manchester United is still one of the top sort of 5 or 6 clubs in the world, and that's got to be sort of attractive to a lot of managers, including someone who's at Villa. I'm not saying Villa aren't a big club because they are, but they're not as big as us. So that appeals to me a little bit. If you could try and make that happen, I don't know. It's probably unlikely, but I wouldn't mind at least testing the waters.
If he went for it, I don't think.
Saying, look, you're not going to come now. You're going to see out your season at Villa, but next season would you come to Manchester United? I think we should at least have that ambition.
Exactly what I was just about to say.
Man. We go in well, we can't get him from Villa. Why not?
Yeah,
we thought we could get players from Villa. Why can't we get the manager?
You know, the power of Manchester United, or the state of Manchester United, is proved by the fact that, you know, considering you haven't won the league since 2013, is it? You still absolutely, all these big managers do want to go there because they know if they can waken it up and win the league, then wow.
Look at what he did at Villa. He went there when Steven Gerrard had set the place on fire and turned it around somewhere. They get into Champions League quarter-finals and in the Champions League places almost. And constantly
played one of the best against PSG that anyone did last season. That second leg at Villa Park was brilliant.
I know it's included. It's not easy, but I think it's at least worth trying.
They've recruited extremely well as well, though. I think.
I agree with that.
Which is good as well.
I agree with that.
Which is why it's important. Seeing the Kamara and Tielemans pivot that they had, that both are free. Which is unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? It's
stop reminding us.
So sometimes decisions like that.
I was outside on Travis saying, "Don't want you every Tielemans." Yeah, and now I love him. Every time I watch him, he's mint. I'm like,
someone that we haven't mentioned as well is that because obviously the permanent appointment's going to be in the summer is obviously, and who's a bit of a big name, who's managed a big club, who's managing Germany currently. I've not seen him mentioned much. Is obviously Nagelsmann. And Nagelsmann, and I was wondering whether that would be someone that kind of people are looking at, thinking, youngish manager, managing in Germany. He had success at Bayern Munich, which is another big club. Could he be someone that comes into the picture?
I think they kind of want someone who maybe is proven in the Premier League. I know there's some of the names we're mentioning. Maresca's one to keep half an eye on because obviously again, it's the City connection.
For City though, wasn't one of the reasons he left Chelsea because he was keeping an open dialogue.
Amorim was working for Liverpool before.
I'm not saying
everyone whilst at Chelsea was doing this. So I think that's the case, isn't it? That he was in an open dialogue with Man City about replacing Pep one day. Why would we say? Why would he be on the list?
Why anything in football sometimes?
Because him and Jason Wilcox are mates and fucking so's Barada, so why not just get him in? Do you know what I mean? Why don't we change our fucking kit to blue? Honestly, man, it's just it needs to be better than their mates and they know each other from the days at City.
It does sound like all the names on the list that we're seeing do sound like ingredients in a dish rather than the main flavour of the dish. You know what I mean? We've had Ferguson. That is what you're getting. That's the whole thing. Now it's a bit of celery in the bolognese. innit? and maybe that's the type of manager they want. Maybe they want.
I think you're right. That's why I threw McKenna and O'Neill there, because I was staggered, especially O'Neill, when I heard that last time round. I was like, I was told 100% it's true.
Do you know the slightly bigger chocolate you get on the 24th in your advent calendar? It's still one of many. It may be slightly more important, but it's not a whole bar of dairy milk, is it, like we've had in the past? That's what we want. We want the 24th door on an advent calendar.
You do.
I think we're going to get that. I don't think we're going to get the big boy Jose type.
Maybe the answer is Big Sam, just to the end of the season.
Yeah, maybe it is. And maybe that's all
we
the
laugh,
answer.
but you never know with them. Are they mates from City? And maybe he'll get the job.
Unbelievable. Evan says, why, when a player speaks out against a manager, the fans immediately say get rid, but when the manager speaks out against the owners, it's keep him? Good question. My opinion on that is, I think, rightly or wrongly, managers are typically, they've been around a bit more experienced. They maybe have, you assume, whether it's true or not, that they have more of a stand-in to say whether they're being harshly treated or not. Whereas with players, again, they're younger. We assume that they don't know what they're on about, they shouldn't do it and all this. I don't know, is the answer. I think it is a little bit of double standard.
Because he's called out Inos and then be sat. I feel like sometimes people might change it. Like when they do revision later, they're going to make out like Amorim some sort of martyr. As well.
Always that.
I hope he is.
Which,
like Ralph Ragnick.
Saint Amorim,
which he isn't. He's not.
Ralph Ragnick with his open heart surgery.
Yeah.
He gets caught all the time. He told us he wanted Haaland, he wanted Alvarez, he wanted all these players. We didn't listen to him. We should have done. And it's like, come on, man.
What a day, eh? What a bloody day.
No,
I think that's a nice place.
It's been a day and a half.
It has been a hell of a day, hasn't it? Ruben Amorim.
What are you working on at the minute?
Yeah, good question.
Well, it'll be the sort of main news, but it'd just be like adding, if anything fresh comes out later on, to do with if they're going to go for a permanent caretaker or a replacement or a permanent manager. And actually, does this change anything transfer-wise?
That's interesting.
Put a link in the description to Jamie's articles in the Guardian. You can check them out.
Thank you, Jamie, for coming on.
Thanks very much.
And obviously for making yourself such a main character in this.
Well, you know me.
If you can, you will.
So shy. He likes to be the main character anything but.
Yeah,
fair play
cheers.
to
Thanks for coming on. Jay, as always, Ronnie. We'll get more into the details and the weeds of how we feel about all this.
We're going
as the week goes on.
I think we've had every reaction on the channel except, I think you spoke to McCall, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's out soon, and we're going to be speaking to Howson as well soon. An interesting one with Stephen Howson. We're going to get into that later, so make sure you check those out.
Plenty to get into. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks again, Jamie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a bit.